Committee, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today on our agenda, we have final action on bills previously heard. We are going to get to the unemployment bill, but first we're going to try to vote on House Bill 2057. That's the liquor bill that we heard the other day. And so if you could pull up House Bill 2057, I'll give you a few moments to look at it and pull up your notes. Charles, that's a heads up for you too. Does anybody need any more time? Seeing none. For discussion on House Bill 2057, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move we pass HB 2057 out, favorable for passage.
Seconded by Representative Clayton. We'll get a description of the bill from Charles Reimer.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2015, as the committee will recall, is a bill that would permit a manufacturer of liquor under the our alcoholic beverage laws to also establish a premises that are not the same as licensed premises in the manufacturer's license, but located not more than 2 miles from the manufacturer's licensed premises, where they can sell their liquor that they manufacture and also other alcoholic beverages. And that's basically what the bill does.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions, or are there any questions for the reviser on this bill? Okay, seeing none. Discussion or amendments on this bill? Okay, seeing none. Representative, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close it.
Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Clayton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. Motion passes. Okay, committee, draw your attention to Bill HB 2196. That is our ongoing unemployment bill. We'll reopen discussion on that. Are there any other discussion or any other amendments? Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment.
Charles, would you circulate his amendment, and then
I can explain it.
You can go ahead and explain it. Yeah, that's fine.
So this actually doesn't touch anything that's already in this bill. It adds an additional portion, but I think it's a good idea. This amendment is also a blatant attempt on my own to increase my amendment batting average in this committee this year. The 0 for 2 is stinging right now, but 1 for 3 would look really great on my baseball card. So what this bill does, essentially right now, there's a Board of Appeals, a review board for all unemployment requests that get kind of appealed up the ladder. It's only 3 people right now, and so this essentially doubles that into 6 people who can act as 2 3-person panels so that we can work through the list much faster, and then that's in essence what it does. It's the exact same makeup as the current 3, it just doubles it into 6.
How are these people appointed, the board?
Each member shall be appointed for a term of 4 years. When a vacancy occurs, the Workers' Compensation Employment Security Board's nominating committee. I believe that's how it works.
Okay. Has the amendment been circulated? Charles, did you send it?
Chairman, I apologize. I'm sending it right now. It took me just a moment to find that.
Okay, thank you. Let me know when you send it. Okay. Take a minute to review that. Is there any, Charles, do you have anything to add?
No, Chairman, I do not.
Any discussion on this amendment? Representative, by taking it from 3 to 6, your contention is that they'll get through more cases quicker?
Yes, that's completely the intention of this. And the 6 people can act as 2 3-people panels. So essentially it doubles the capacity that we have now.
And it takes 3 people to look at each case right now?
I believe that's how it works, yes.
Can anyone else confirm that? Is the Department of Labor on here that can answer that question?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Julie Mangini, Government Affairs Director for the Department of Labor. The Appeals Board is the final board of appeal when a claimant has been denied benefits and they've appealed it before it would go to district court. And the members are nominated by the nominating committee. It requires governor approval and then Senate confirmation.
Okay, and so would it, is there a backlog, and how far is the backlog?
I cannot speak to if there is already a backlog, but we anticipate a backlog because of the volume of claims that we are receiving, and we just want to be prepared and not cause yet another bottleneck.
Representative Miller?
I appreciate the input, but she didn't actually address the question that was raised about, are they required to act in bodies of 3?
Thanks for pointing that out. Julie, could you answer that?
I believe at least 2 members, if not all 3, have to be there.
Have you seen this amendment, Julie?
Yes, actually, it was well, I haven't seen this amendment, what it does, because we requested a bill in the Senate that did the same thing. It does not have a hearing scheduled, so we were concerned that we might miss an opportunity to try to make things work more smoothly.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we don't accidentally have a 6-person committee that has to look at every case. I mean, so if it's 3 and 3 or 2 and 2.
It's 3 and 3. It would be 3 and 3. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you very much for answering the questions. Representative Carpenter.
I think I found it, Mr. Chair. They make $15,000 a year plus travel and expenses. I was just curious how much they
More than we do. Any further discussion on this amendment? Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm kind of lost here. Why are we doing this and nobody can answer the question if that's where the bottleneck is? And I would hate to mess up your card. But
I think she said that they're foreseeing a bottleneck because of all the fraud cases that are going to have to be looked at going forward. There's no fraud. Representative Probst.
Thank you, Chair. You answered or said what I was going to say. The real point of this is a real authentic effort to try to anticipate the next problem in the unemployment infrastructure, which will be people who were denied claims and appeal them. And right now we have 3 people who do that. They just want to try to get ahead of that by creating in that board 2 panels that can do the same thing so they can run through those faster.
Okay, Representative Hsu, I'm not really seeing a problem with this amendment other than the fact that it might be ongoing. Is there a sunset in this?
Yes, it sunsets June 30th, 2024.
Representative Carpenter, did you have another question? Okay, cool. Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this amendment address continuity between the 2 committees? In other words, these 3 are going to think like these 3?
My impression is the board makeup in terms of partisan makeup will be the exact same on both. And so it's 4, I believe, Republicans and 2 Democrats, and be 2 and 1, 2 and 1 on each board. So in terms of that, yes, everybody has their own personalities, but in terms of the makeup of the 2 panels, they would be the same.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
It's my understanding that, thank you, Mr. Chairman, that we're no longer backlogged and that this may not be needed. I'm wondering if this should be something the Senate takes up and takes a look at it.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't think that it's been scheduled for a hearing. So we can't control what the Senate does. We can control what we do.
Representative Probst.
I guess I just want to say one more thing on this. It would be preferable to create the additional board and not need it than to not create it and need it. Based on what we've seen in this last year, I think we should err on the side of increasing capacity to manage claims.
I tend to agree with you. If there's a problem, we can also take it off in the Senate. Any further discussion? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if we create the board, do we necessarily have to use them if the capacity isn't there, or is it a position that would be firmly set?
I believe he said it sunsetted in 2024, and so those 3 additional members would be would roll off at that point. Is that right, Representative?
Yeah, and to kind of, I think, go into the intention of the question, it says the board shall be 6 members, but it says that for the purposes of hearing and determining case, they may sit in panels. So that gives, I believe, a little bit of leeway in terms of, if we don't need them, there might be a little bit of leeway there.
Any further discussion? The amendment is seconded by Representative Clayton. Seeing no further discussion, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion seconded by Representative Clayton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Representative, the 333 batting average is pretty good. Maybe we should just stick with that. Representative Miller.
Technical question, will that be recorded as a home run?
Yeah. Yes, sir. More like a suicide squeeze. Any further discussion, Representative Auerkamp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few days ago, we tried the sunset amendment. I had to take it back to reword it, so I'd like to offer that again. So I'll offer the sunset amendment. I did get, I think Charles has it, and I did copy Cindy on the email, I think.
Okay, Charles, to make sure that the proper amendment is sent out, could you please send that to Cindy and have her forward it? Does everybody have the amendment? Okay, thank you. Did you receive it and forward it? Okay. Everybody's got it? Okay. Representative, you want to explain your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment just adds the 3-year sunset, and it also clarifies that appointments made by the governor, not the appointments made by the Senate President or the Speaker of the House, but all other members just shall serve the 3 years until the council is dissolved. And if there's any vacancies, they get filled in the same manner that they were originally filled. There's one thing I think, Mr. Reimer, if you want to chime in on this, page 3, there's a duplication. And I think he said he could just eliminate that off the amendment.
Charles?
Yes, that's correct. So we can, yeah. So the committee should be aware of that. You know, if this amendment is passed, that duplication would also be removed.
Okay. So this is sunsets the council in 3 years, and if we extend the sunset, the members are reappointed every 3 years. Is that kind of how I heard that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it addresses if we extend the sunset. I would imagine, and I defer to obviously Mr. Reiner, but if we extend the sunset, we would have to probably address those terms based on how far we extend the sunset. But I think at that time, the terms of the extension need to be addressed.
That makes sense. Representative Clayton.
Thank you. Representative, would you mind just elaborating a little bit more on the need for this or the reasoning behind it, please?
Sure. Personally, I think the Oversight Council is a good thing, and if it continued, that would be fine. But I think looking at it again in 3 years, it'll give us a chance to see if any changes are needed, also be able to evaluate the work a little bit more closely of that council, and just gives the committee a chance to look at it again. I think we see a lot of sunsets throughout statute, and I see some benefit to putting a lot more attention on the unemployment system, and I think this will help do that.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Long seconds the amendment. You may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Committee, you've all heard the motion, seconded by Representative Long. All in favor say aye. All against say no. Further discussion on the amendment. Representative Johnson, would you be able to explain the rate tables or opine to the rate tables for us?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it's going to cost?
361 million, definitely 361 million. Brett Flashbar, Kansas Department of Labor, 372,535,118 by Phil's estimate.
Hey, any further discussion?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. A little more color. The teams have done a great job putting different alternatives together. Bill Hayes' work is very thorough, looking at everything and trying to get a handle on how to have a more level payment system over time. So there's some choices that we would have. The benefit to the level payment system is that those payments don't go up as dramatically when times are tough. But they would stay higher when times are good, and that could contribute to carrying higher balances. That's not necessarily a negative, but it's something we'd have to understand and welcome, that we keep paying when times are good to get through those times that are more lean. With the amendment that would add to the balance of the trust fund to give us some additional cushion in the short term, that would be key. Trying to get a real handle. So the numbers I gave you are the highest amount that's paid, and that's relevant to get an idea of how quickly you catch up. And there's a small discrepancy between what Bill's numbers were to be informal and the Department of Labor's numbers were about 10 million on what they produced. But at the average, they would come in at around 290 million would be the neutral table until you moved either one way up or down. The first step takes a pretty good step, and generally that should be what we bump between, is just right down the middle, one table up, one table down. Getting further out, the tables are where it flattens out a lot under these newer numbers versus what we had. And again, benefit to pay that level over time. So if we're looking at around 290 million raised, and that doesn't, by the way, include, I believe you get another 18 to 24 million from new employers that aren't in the estimate, if I have that correct in my mind, so I can add a little to that. Looking historically at the average, it's hard to get a good average. I understand we had some changes in 2013 that affected lowered payouts. So if it lowered payouts by a certain amount, I want to try and adjust for that. The raw average is 320 million a year, not counting 2020, going back to 2006. But if I also consider 2009 to be an outlier, which many of us think it would be, that number, if I pull it out, changes the average by itself to 285. If I assume that claims have decreased by only 15%, which we generally think would be light, that also pulls the average down to 285, which is in the ballpark of what the average would raise. And then the questions will be to continue to monitor. Bad years tend to follow bad years. We don't often get one bad year and then right back to good. So as long as we're going in with a solid trust fund, we're in great shape, or great might be an overstatement, but we would be in good shape. But then when good years tend to follow on for a while, that will potentially build the balance, which is a good thing, and we just have to stick with that plan. If we look at the average since 2014, it looks really bright because those numbers have been pretty low, and a lot of funding plans would work for that. This one, if we look on the average and say that, well, that might be a little low, and we have to consider some of the previous years, I think that you have to, you know, don't hurt the baby, right, to the previous one. Don't hurt the trust fund. How do you make sure that that payment stream is level? But I think having a target of in that 280 plus to 290 range is going to be pretty close to what we're seeing on average claims on trying to come up with a reasonable average. So doable, and then it's our policy choice. Do we want to have a table that reacts more quickly when times are tough? Do we want to have a table that more consistently funds it, but means that we've got to pay larger sums when times are good to carry us through? So a little vague on that, but a lot of the tables can work. We just have to stick with it, and then we've got to monitor it to make sure, is this actually working?
You have a suggestion on how to monitor it or make sure that it is monitored?
Well, you know, we had talked about whether or not there'd just be a report on where we are, trying to project where the fund is, what the projected inflows are, and what our current experience is on payout. If we were less certain, we could also consider sunsetting the new tables and going to the old tables if we were not certain that it would keep up.
Any questions for Rain Man? Okay, seeing none, thanks for that. And I would imagine we'll bring an amendment to put either a sunset on it or to have a report each year on it, probably tomorrow. Any further discussion? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a very small amendment. Cindy, would you pass that out?
Go ahead and explain it.
Yes. Thank you, Representative from Shawnee County. Is that correct? After further considering his dates, we're going to change those dates and actually extend it from December 31st, 2022 for the audit until March 31st, well, that would have been 21 to 22. So we actually make it shorter. It will end March, I'm making this crystal clear, March 31st, 2022 instead of December 31st, 2022. So it will end, the audit portion will end prior to the reporting. And so you should have that and you can take a look at it.
Cindy, did you send that out? Okay, so to be clear, we've got March 2020 through March 2021 is the auditing period. 22 is the auditing period. So about 2 years. Then the report is due when September. Charles, do you have a copy of the amendment?
Chairman, I have sent that to Cindy.
Okay. Did she leave anything out, or does there need to be further explanation?
No, Chairman, it is just a change, and as you recall, this amendment passed. So all we were doing is changing the date to the previously passed audit amendment.
Okay. Any questions for the bringer of the motion? Representative Miller.
Just want to make sure we can still get it done before the election.
Probably, yeah. If it's,
thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any further discussion? Seeing none, you can close.
Closed.
Committee, you've heard the motion seconded by Representative Long. All in favor, say aye. All All against, say no. Motion passes. Further discussion, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment dealing with reemployment, and I would ask that while the reviser explains this amendment, that our committee assistant sends it out to everyone. There are also two supplemental pieces. Cindy, if you could mail out with the amendment.
Excuse me, Representative, does Cindy already have that?
Yeah, Cindy, I sent the two supplementals yesterday.
Would you send them to her again so she could forward them? Charles, you can go ahead and explain the amendment.
Chairman, members of the committee, this is an amendment that adds my reemployment plan. It is a new section that is added to the bill. Basically, the amendment provides that the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Commerce are to establish and implement this my reemployment plan. And it directs that the Secretary of Labor, not later than the 4th week of benefits provided to a claimant, is to request the claimant's resume or work history, a skills list, and a job search plan. The Secretary is to offer and provide, when requested, assistance to the claimant in developing the resume and other skills list, job search plan, through collaboration with the Kansas Works workforce system. The Secretary of Labor is directed to share labor market information and current available job positions with the unemployment insurance claimants, and may collaborate with the Secretary of Commerce and Kansas Works on other state or federal agencies with job availability information. The Secretary is to match open job positions with claimants based on skills, work history, and a job location that is a reasonable commute. And the Secretary of Labor is to also consider whether the claimant or a Kansas employer would benefit from the claimant's participation in a work skills training or retraining program, as provided later in the amendment, and if so, provide such information to the employer, and if applicable, the claimant and the Secretary of Commerce. The Secretary is to facilitate and monitor the claimant and the employer interview process, monitor the results of job matches, including any information the claimant did not attend an interview or did not accept a position. The Secretary of Labor is to contact a claimant that did not attend an interview or did not accept a position, and consider whether the claimant has failed to meet work search requirements under Kansas law and if benefits should continue. The Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Commerce are jointly to implement a work skills training or retraining program for claimants in collaboration with the Kansas Works workforce system. The program is to develop in collaboration with Kansas employers and other state or federal agencies or organizations as appropriate. The Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Commerce are to obtain or utilize any available federal funds for the program, and to the extent feasible, the Secretary of Commerce is to make current work skills training and retraining programs available to claimants. Secretary of Labor may allow claimants to participate in a work skills training or retraining program in lieu of requiring the claimant to meet job search requirements, and The claimant shall participate in such a program for not less than 25 hours per week. The Secretary of Labor is to monitor claimants that are participating in a work skills training or retraining program to ensure attendance and progress. Claimants that participate in the My Reemployment Plan or the Work Skills Training or Retraining Program are to meet attendance or progress requirements established by the Secretary to continue eligibility for their benefits. Claimants that fail to participate are to be disqualified from receiving unemployment benefits until they demonstrate compliance with the Secretary. Secretary may continue benefits or reinstate the claimant's eligibility for benefits upon the showing of good cause by the claimant for the failure to meet attendance or progress requirements or the future failure to participate in the My Reemployment Plan or the Work Skills Training and Retraining Program. The Secretary of Labor is to provide an annual status update and progress reports regarding the requirements of this section to the House Committee on Commerce, Senate Committee on Commerce during the first month of the 2022 regular legislative session and the first month of each regular legislative session thereafter. And that is what the amendment does, a new section to the bill as I described it.
Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The revisor has done a great job explaining this. What it is an amendment to collaboration between the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce that goes one step further than we're currently going to help people get back to work. It's a reemployment plan. Some of you may have seen this in years past. It's not a new plan, it's just being reintroduced. This plan was enforced during Governor Collier's period as governor. And so we looked at it, thought it was a good amendment. If you look at the two supplements that Cindy sent you.
Cindy, I forwarded those supplements. Did you get them out to people?
Yeah, I think, does everybody have those? If you look at those start to give you an idea of how this plan works. I would also, I have to admit I wasn't here during Governor Collier's time, but I would ask our chairman to reiterate any part of this program. I know you were here.
Anybody want to second the Representative Sutton will second the motion. Yes, so when Governor Collier was here, he instituted what was called My Reemployment Plan, and it was highly successful in getting people, out of the system and into a good job. And so currently the federal laws cause us to make sure that everybody's looking for work, and that has been reinstated. This is just kind of takes it to the next level so that they can identify somebody that might need some help with a resume or even some training. And it allows our corporations or companies to request a certain skill level of employee, and we can match them up. And so it's kind of it's a neat little job service program, and it was highly successful when Governor Collier was here, and it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. And so we just thought we'd codify this into the new plan to make sure that future administrations can use it. Any discussion, Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, as we're looking at the supplements, I'm looking at this, the application supplement. And so, of course, I see right here the failure to return this form in 7 days will result in a denial of benefits. I think that my main concern here is just, again, with all of the forms and the backlog and what we're dealing with now with KDOL, if this will end up adding another layer of confusion or potential issues when it comes to that. So that's a concern that, that I'm expressing here. I don't know if anyone who's on with KDOL could speak to that, but I, just want to make sure, because I do think overall it's a good idea. But during the previous administration's time, of course, we had very low unemployment and weren't in the middle of a disaster, right? So I just want to make sure that logistically this wouldn't cause any extra issues. So if anyone could address that, I'd be grateful.
So the thing that you're looking at, the application you're looking at, is not in statute. It's the statute doesn't call for this particular. This was an example that we sent out, so you kind of see what the program was like and how it was run.
Yeah, so I would just express concerns just to make sure that that this is something that would flow through, because I don't, we don't want to see any additional problems with that.
Any other questions? Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did receive the supplements, but I never received the amendment itself, so I'm kind of flying a little bit blind here, if you'll indulge my questions. Did I understand the summary right, that this will be conditional, it'll be tied to the unemployment system, and there's a series of things that the employee would have, that the unemployed employee would have to do, and then that would cycle back to the Department of Labor, and there are things the Department of Labor would do that goes back to the employee, and then that makes it, and it's tied to unemployment. Is that right?
It is. The unemployment claim triggers this after 4 weeks.
Okay. Again, not having the amendment in front of me, I guess I do want to echo the concerns raised by Representative Clayton. We heard testimony yesterday that there are 900 variables that right now play into unemployment claims. And as I understand, as we've been learning more about this system throughout the last year, one of the complicating factors in a moment of crisis is that we have so many variables that we've created, because frankly, we've tried to create as many barriers to collecting unemployment as possible, that when we're in a crisis, we've made it so complicated. Every single thing in here is another line of code. It's an if-then situation in a line of code that has to cycle through, and it's another opportunity for a glitch, and it's another opportunity for a failure. I don't disagree necessarily philosophically with it. I just have some real concerns about creating additional layers of programming, additional if-then questions that have to be answered before someone can collect unemployment.
Chairman?
Thank you for your concern.
Chairman?
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to let the committee know that the amendment has been sent. My apologies for that. I misinterpreted what Representative Long said, and I thought he had sent it already, so my apologies.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification, and it looks like we've received it. I heard your concerns, Representative, but I'd remind you that this was a policy that was in place and working quite well before. So if there's any code, it's already there. And my guess is that it operated outside of the computer system. Can't speak to that, though, Representative Probst.
It couldn't possibly exist outside the system if it's a condition of receiving unemployment benefits. It has to be programmed into that code. I just think it seems like it's just and again, during the previous administration, unemployment was really low. We didn't have what we have right now. I think both in this time and what we saw in 2008, we have a habit here of planning for the lean times, and we build policy around the best possible scenario, and then we wonder why it doesn't work in the worst possible scenario.
Representative Clayton for the second time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received the language, and so I do find that helpful, and I appreciate that. I don't know if it is appropriate to, to ask implementation questions of anyone who's on KDOL at this time. So if it's not procedurally appropriate, I will withdraw that, but always worth a check.
Secretary or Deputy Secretary Flash Barth, I think, is familiar with this program, so he might be able to speak to how it ran. And that would be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, Deputy Secretary Brett Flash Barth is not on right now. I have requested the amendment from Charles so that I can get it to him and have him look at it. I do know that the RESEA is mandated to be back in place by the end of March this year, and our target right now is mid-March. And we currently do work with the Department of Commerce in this area, but I do not know enough about the program to speak more to that.
Do you recall this program from 2 years ago?
Yes, and I believe that we did it. RESEA was something we were doing prior to the pandemic.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Representative, you can close.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment that HB 2196 is a piece of very comprehensive legislation. You know, it deals with methods of paying out, it deals with methods of paying in, it deals with modernization. I think if it were to deal with helping people get back to work, that would also make sense in this bill. So with that thought in mind, I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Sutton. All in favor, say aye. All against, say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. For further discussion on the bill, Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's good to be with you all here in person today.
Great to see you.
So, and I have something to say, so hopefully you don't say that from here on out I'm to be virtual. But, you know, for the past several years, this committee has done some really good and thoughtful work. You know, we've worked to do workforce alignment, providing that important link between educational and career opportunities for students with business. We've worked to remove barriers for those that move to Kansas to be able to practice their trade and to start earning a livelihood more quickly. Most of the time we've focused on removing barriers. And this bill has been on my mind a lot. I've been thinking about it, and something I read this morning on Facebook, you know it must be true, right? Well, it just made me think about things, about our deliberations in kind of a different way. So you know the saying, we are all in the same boat. And I never really thought about that much more than just taking it at face value. Yep, we're all in the same boat. But to quote the Post, we are not all in the same boat. We are in the same storm. Some of us have yachts, some of us have canoes, and some of us are drowning. Just be kind and help when you can. Personally, we probably represent all of those categories. But as a committee, we are a yacht, and we have the ability to help those in the canoes and the ability to especially help those that are drowning. And that is who we're talking about. It was just a few days ago that several members of this committee read heartbreaking emails. Those are the emails and the phone calls for desperation, for help that we're all receiving. And I don't think that there's any one of us that doesn't want to help. And now is our opportunity to do that. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment to offer. And I'd ask that the reviser please distribute that and And if he could help explain that.
Okay, did you want to take a stab at explaining it, or do you want Charles to do it?
Well,
for you?
I can take a stab at explaining it.
Okay.
But perhaps he could go ahead and distribute it.
Okay, we'll wait for that.
Chairman, I have sent the amendment to Cindy.
Basically, what
does. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Charles.
Oh, I was just going to say that basically what this amendment does is with respect to the triggers that were changed in the bill, as the committee will recall, the number of maximum weeks of unemployment benefits that are allowed under the employment security law is based on the adjusted average unemployment rate for the state. Right now, of course, there's a provision, sort of a COVID-related provision that is in effect, but after April 1st, 2021, we're going to go back to those triggers. And as the committee will recall, this bill currently amends those triggers and changes them on page 33 of the bill. What this amendment does is it just removes the new triggers. So it deletes the section currently in the bill adjusting those triggers, and we're going to use the triggers that are in current law that instead of those new triggers. And if you want, I can state what the difference is, but that's basically what this amendment does.
So thank you for that. And so basically, in my own simple terms, it just leaves the rate structure the same that it is today. And I would say that this is not a time for us to reduce benefits. For so many of our community that have had to weather this past year, they truly need this help now so that they can get back on their feet. And so I would say that this is a time that we do not change those rates. We leave them the same, and at some time in the future, when things improve, we can revisit that.
Okay, seconded by Representative Clayton. Any discussion? Representative Probst.
Apologize for talking so much today. I just want to remind people, we discussed this a little bit before. I want to remind the committee that having these triggers in here based on a statewide unemployment rate doesn't address a lot of things that we saw before the pandemic, and a lot of things I'm sure we'll see after. Just this last week, we learned that a lot of manufacturing facilities shut down temporarily because of the gas crisis, and they'll probably be back into operation pretty soon. But I'm remembering the Tyson fire out west. I'm remembering years ago when there was a huge snowstorm out west. There are a lot of things that happen that affect employment that are isolated and that would impact people, and it would limit their ability to collect unemployment when they need it based on a statewide average that doesn't address their specific localized need.
Any further discussion? Yeah, I would just say that, the change was to match the federal, what federal says, the Federal Department of Labor says that full employment is, and it's actually 5.1 or 5.2, I believe, and we moved it to 5.0 from 4.5. And in regards to, unemployment fluctuating, that's what the triggers are for. I mean, we're not really reducing benefits. We're at a 5% or 4% unemployment right now. And so as employment fluctuates, so will the allowable term, and that's the whole idea. And so, on April 21st, when our bill from last year sunsets, it's going to go back to the sliding scale all this does is change the sliding scale to match what the U.S. Department of Labor says is full employment. And the end goal, just like the previous amendment, is to get people back into the workplace sooner rather than later. It's a proven fact that the longer someone stays at home and not working, it's much more difficult to be employable. And so I would say that I won't be supporting the amendment, but you know, that's your call. Everybody has their own opinion. Are there any further discussions? Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just urge some caution here, because many of us know individuals who have lost their jobs or who have lost even additional supplemental jobs and have had to go back to work or have had to pick up additional jobs that don't make as much money. So I think one of the concerns that I have about, there's this idea of getting people back to work, but there's also lower wages, lower quality of life, and above all, I also think about what the carrier of the amendment expressed regarding compassion, regarding the way that we appear. In fact, I don't usually speak about that body on the east side of the building, but they have expressed concern about how this is going to be perceived by some of our constituents right in the middle of the time when they are fighting for their benefits. So do bear that in mind. I do think that we have an opportunity to be helpful to our constituents who are suffering.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to reemphasize, I mean, this has been a tough year on everybody, and it's going to take some time for people to get back on their feet. We still aren't addressing many of the barriers that people have to getting back to unemployment or getting back to being employed. I think I mentioned in a previous meeting that workforce partnership in Wyandotte County was totally inaccessible for several months. People couldn't even reach them or go there to even find out about the 6,000 plus jobs that are available in my community. We still haven't addressed kids being homeschooled and then not having quality childcare. Those are all barriers that are keeping people from getting back in the workforce, and we are not addressing any of those issues. This is a small step. This gives people just a little bit more leeway to help them get back on their feet after what they have weathered this past year. And so with that, I move my amendment.
Committee, you've all heard the motion, seconded by Representative Clayton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. Yes, Representative Clayton.
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I please have my vote recorded?
Noes appear to have it. Noes do. Representative Probst. Noes do have it. Representative Probst and Representative Clayton would like their no vote. Representative Shue would like his no vote recorded.
Representative Burrows, too, please.
We voted yes.
Sorry, yes. My bad.
Representative Reese,
little
too.
bit of role reversal here. I'm assuming that maybe all the Democrats would like their no votes recorded. Yes, votes recorded. Representative Miller.
With regard to your last statement, you realize what assume means? I did not have my hand up.
Thank you, sir. Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment. If I can do this better than I did last time, I'll have Charles go ahead and get that out to everyone. You want me to go ahead and explain it?
That's fine. Go ahead and explain it. Charles, get that to Cindy and she'll circulate it.
So for those of you who've been on the committee last year or previous years, this won't be new to you. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, this will be new. This amendment basically loops in bus drivers for educational facilities or educational institutions to be eligible for unemployment. I'm going to be as brief as I can, but unfortunately for me to make my argument for why we need to do this, I have to share with you a little bit of the legislative history, because I believe that what applied in 1987 when this was done is not applicable in 2021, and it's an opportunity to review this and correct what I view as an error in the law that stood for a very long time. So, bus drivers, we've taken them out of unemployment. We made them ineligible for unemployment, and the idea being that they're probably going to come back to work next season. But when I started looking at the history of this, what I realized is that this didn't begin as a bus driver exclusion. It began as a school nurse exclusion. And if you'll bear with me, I'll share a little bit of the legislative history. The bill was House Bill 2342 in 1987. It was born after the County Health Department of Shawnee County notified the legislature that their school nurses had been drawing unemployment benefits during the last 2 or 3 summers, and this had put a big hole in their pockets. The County Health Department had contracted with 4 Shawnee school districts to provide school nurses. So the Shawnee County Health Department said, we'd like to change this and pull school nurses out of this. While they're at it, they had a Joyce Lacey, the co-owner of a small school busing contracting firm, who testified in favor of the bill. She said that, quote, most of her employees were housewives and retired people who were only relying on bus driving jobs for a little extra money and not full-time income. She argued that their eligibility for unemployment compensation was unnecessary and a burden on small businesses like hers. So then, fast forward to the last several years, we've had testimony from companies, big companies, that employ school bus drivers full-time. It's their job. And they're having a hard time retaining bus drivers because they're out of work every summer, or they have kind of shifty schedules. And they also express some concern about safety, and that they have someone trained and understand how to manage a school bus full of children and keep them safe while they're on the road. And then they find another job, maybe another job that pays better, maybe another job that's more predictable for their schedule, and they stop bus driving. And then they have to train someone else. And I think in the last testimony that we had last year, there was reference to a very tragic accident involving school children in a bus, and it was largely due to an unqualified and inexperienced bus driver. So that's the purpose for my effort today. I do hope that we'll consider this. I know we've debated this quite a bit, and I know that this vote typically goes along party lines. I really believe that it shouldn't be a party issue. We created an exclusion in 1987 when the world was quite different than it is today, when people didn't drive bus as a full-time job, when that wasn't their primary source of income. And we're in 2021, and that's a viable job, and it's a job that people hold full-time, except during the time that session is out, and they're left trying to manage or get other jobs. We've heard that testimony too. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
The amendment seconded by Representative Clayton. For discussion on the amendment, Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Probst, are any other professions already in HB 2196? I just want to see if it's related to anything else.
Make sure I understand. Any other professions excluded from unemployment?
Or just referenced in the current HB 2196. I thought there was something about petroleum.
Oh, we did exclude petroleum landmen. While I have the floor again, I guess I should make mention. We don't exclude from unemployment contract custodial staff. We don't exclude from unemployment contract food service workers. This is a really weird wrinkle in the law that we've not extended to everyone else. We just put something in place in 1987 because it made good sense for 1987. But as we see, and we see opportunities to change the law, to update them to modern times, we do that.
Any further discussion? I'll just make a couple of comments before you close. We looked at this last year. We had a hearing on it in Commerce Committee. It didn't go anywhere, and I believe it was pulled above the line by Johnson County representative. And we had a discussion on it and a vote on it on the floor. And it was defeated pretty soundly. These employees they're contracted employers. They know that they're going to work a certain amount of time. They know that they're a seasonal employee. They have reasonable assurance to come back the next year. They can look for work in the 2 or 3 months that they're off in the summer, and a lot of them do, and a lot of them find jobs, and they're better jobs. And sure, maybe they won't come back, but that's a better job for that employee. Retaining an employee is not a reason for unemployment insurance. That is a business decision that needs to be made by the busing companies. And, you know, when I had discussions with the busing unions last year, I'm like, well, you know, I tried to discuss with them that why would you come after the state for unemployment on a contracted employee, a seasonal employee? Why wouldn't you go after the companies? Why wouldn't you lobby the companies to come up with a better pay plan or a better way to retain their own employees? And finally, schools last year were dead set against this. I mean, and I think that's what ultimately killed the bill on the floor, was they were absolutely against this. And we heard from all of our school districts that they did not want this, because the rest of their employees are all contracted as well. You can pay these people just like they do teachers, either during the year when they're teaching or throughout the entire year. That would be one option that you could offer a school bus driver. But, you know, I'm not a school bus driver. I'm not a school bus company owner. So, I couldn't affect that. But that's just my 2 cents. Seeing no further discussion, you can close.
Before I move the amendment, I do want to make one additional point. Companies use unemployment all the time to retain employees. Manufacturing does it when they have planned shutdowns. If you're familiar with the oil refinery in McPherson County, that shuts down every year. It's predictable, it's planned, and in order to retain those employees, they allow them to collect unemployment. Manufacturing facilities, I used to work at one. We shut down for several weeks during the winter when we were slow, and we did updating on our equipment, and we collected unemployment. We were eligible to collect unemployment. Contractors, people who work on construction crews, when they have seasonal outages and they know there won't be work, those are planned shutdowns, and they're eligible for unemployment. Employers consistently use unemployment as a tool to retain quality employees so that they don't have to go out and start from scratch and hire a new person and go through the expense of training them. But in order to manage their business, they have periods of time that they're required to shut down to do maintenance or upkeep or update, or because the work just isn't available. I would argue, and I would ask the committee to consider, that it's no different for school bus drivers, and we need to correct the failure of past legislatures to not address a problem should not bind this legislature or future legislatures from correcting that wrong. Thank you. I move my amendment.
Committee, you've heard the motion seconded by Representative Clayton. All in favor of the motion say aye. All against the motion say no.
Aye.
Noes appear to have it. Noes do have it. Further discussion on the bill, Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment. Charles, would you mind distributing that to the committee, please? All right.
Representative Clayton,
yes.
What amendment would this be?
This would be Clayton number 6 is what it was originally, but I think that we changed it to Clayton number 2.
Okay.
Look at how generous I am. We had a lot more amendments, guys. No, but in any case, so while he's finding that and sending that out to all of you, what this does is that on page 36, it inserts a balloon that says no contributing employer rated governmental employer or reimbursing employer's account shall be charged for any benefits paid fraudulently or improperly beginning on March 15th, 2020 through December 31st, 2021. And so, and then it goes on to define what an improper payment is. And so this is just on request of some of our nonprofits, and happy to stand for any questions.
Charles, could you explain the amendment as well? Because it sounds like that's exactly what this bill does for all reimbursing employees, all nonprofits, all businesses. It holds everyone harmless for fraudulent claims and for improper payments. Is that what this amendment, does this amendment do more than that?
Chairman, as the committee will recall, unless I'm mistaken, on page 36 of the bill, there was a provision that provided no contributing employer, rated governmental employer, or reimbursing employer's account shall be charged for any benefits paid beginning on March 15, 2020 through December 31, 2021. And I believe that that paragraph was removed as part of a prior amendment. What this amendment does is reinserts language as stated by Representative Clayton, and then the new language is no contributing employer, rated governmental employer, or reimbursing employer's account shall be charged. It's the same language basically, and then it adds a definition for purposes of this clause. An improper payment means any payment that should not have been made, or that was made an incorrect amount under statutory, contractual, administrative, or other legally applicable requirements. So, the amendment basically reinstates that provision with the addition of that definition.
Is that definition of improper payment any different than other definitions of improper payments in the bill?
Chairman, no, that is the same definition.
Okay, so was this something that was inadvertently taken out? Because that wouldn't be any, I don't think anyone would have the intent of taking that out. In which amendment was it that Representative Hoffman?
Yeah, that was the first amendment that I brought, that we took, I guess, 21 through 23 out, and then we added down below, starting in 24, we added the language in there to make sure that we were talking about only that we would be holding harmless those employers for only fraudulent and improper payments. So I guess I'm not sure what this does that it's not already in there. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would say if this is already, Representative Miller. Oh, no, I thought you were raising your hand. I would say that if this is already definitely added back in, I think that there was some confusion about the Hoffman Amendment and what that did. And so if we can say that it's definitely already fine, then we can just leave as is, and I am comfortable withdrawing the amendment if it is redundant or not necessary. I think a lot of changes, a lot of confusion, and working the bill over a couple of weeks, just wanted to make sure.
It's the second time that this has happened, but yeah, I think that was the intent of this. And my guess is you were working with Charles separately on an amendment. We've already put something in exactly like it. So.
All right, so yep, that happens sometimes, and so I will go ahead and withdraw this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This probably seems very picayunish, but it's just a point of clarification. On page 33, and my attention was drawn to this as Representative Curtis was presenting her amendment, but that line 16, should the word be unemployment rather than employment, and if so, will that be caught in the proofreading process?
What was
line 16 on page 33? The word now says the adjusted average employment rate for the state of Kansas. I wonder if it should be unemployment.
Charles,
if that will be caught in the proofreading process.
Yes, we can make that change.
I didn't hear.
You said yes, we can make that change. Charles, do we need to make an amendment for that, or just that's an automatic in the proofread?
You know, if you would be willing, I think that would fall in the category of just, you know, an error. I mean, if you want to make an amendment, you can.
Charles, I think I'd rather make a blanket amendment to allow you to make those kinds of necessary changes.
That would be
so that we don't have to address each one individually.
Thank you.
Would you like to make that amendment, Representative Mason?
Yes, I do.
Seconded by Representative Carpenter. Any discussion on that? Basically what this does is allow the revisers to proofread it and change the words that should be there. Seeing no discussion, Representative, you can close.
I'll renew my motion.
Committee, you've heard the motion. Second by Representative Carpenter. All in favor say aye. All against say no. Motion carries. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment. It would be listed under Miller. It's a funny story behind that name if you want to hear it. But if the reviser would please distribute that.
Go ahead and tell us your story. What the heck?
You called my bluff, sorry.
You're having a heck of a day today.
I'm in a good mood.
Charles, let us know when you circulate.
And I can explain it. It's pretty easy.
Go ahead.
It reduces the disqualification period from the current statutory 5 years to 1 year, puts Kansas more in line with the rest of the country. Given all the different circumstances that I think are going to haunt us on people who are punished by that, I think this would be a good time to modify it.
Statutory language, 5 years to 1 year under the
disqualification for
if you commit fraud.
If you're deemed to have committed fraud. I know people who have been deemed to commit fraud that didn't, and that's part of the purpose of my motion.
Okay. Representative Clayton seconds the motion. Any discussion? The amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for Charles to explain to me where that is in the bill, where it's going to be the change.
Charles, have you circulated the amendment?
Okay, just got it.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, I have. One moment while I bring that up. So, in response to Representative Highland's question, this amendment would add a new section to the bill, a new statute 44706, and it would then amend that statute to change the period of disqualification for fraud, as Representative Miller indicated, from 5 years to 1 year.
Okay. Any discussion on this amendment? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the representative could fill me in a little bit more about, you said it was bringing it more in line with other states. Do you have a little bit more background on that?
Other than anecdotally, that's what I've been told from the department, is that we are on the far end of the spectrum in terms of harshness.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
And if the amendment fails, I would make at this time a request of research if they could document where we're at in comparison to the other states. I don't want to mislead anyone.
We should get that either way.
Either way, you're right. But we wouldn't need it if I wasn't going to offer the amendment, but I intend to offer it later, so even if it fails, I would like to have that.
Sure. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it just changes it from 1 year to 5 years, why wouldn't we just change the 5 to 1 instead of adding a new section?
Well, so we had to add the new section in there because it's a separate statute. So you put the entire statute into this bill, and then you amend the number of years from 5 to 1. So, Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, just in a statement that will shock nobody, I rise in support of this amendment. Again, primarily as we look in our inboxes and look at these cases that are coming to us from our constituents, some of the ones that I have the most trouble with are the ones where someone accidentally gets kicked into the fraud black hole. And you know, I definitely think that we have real issues of genuine fraud, but I think that we have a great deal, many more innocent people who might have pushed the wrong button, clicked the wrong thing, or folks are, you know, these things are just happening. So, you know, out of sympathy for them, I will support this.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support this for the reason the representative brought up, except reading through this, I mean, I feel like it makes it pretty clear that the individual has to knowingly make the false statement or knowingly fail to disclose material. And I think we already talked to the department that they were going to work to make sure that those that were frauded this would not affect them. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to see what other states are like, because I certainly don't want to make someone who is knowingly going out and trying to fraud the system make it easier for them to come back and try it again. So,
Representative Williams.
Okay, just doing some quick searches. It looks like that most states are either between 1 and 3. And for you to fall in the category that you've known some people, you would have to be adjudicated. You would have to be found to have, to the representative's point, intentionally committed fraud. So I feel like there are already barriers and protections in play, and it sounds like we're not too far off from other states, and that, you know, I would be surprised that the Department of Labor would want 5 years in instances where appeals have been made.
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think this was originally initiated for people that are caught frauding the system, so I think it needs to be there. As much as 5 years may be too harsh, I think a year is not harsh enough. So, you know, it strikes me 2 or 3 years would be more appropriate. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Representative Auerkamp on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be quick. I think if somebody knowingly attempts to fraud the system, I think 5 years is too lenient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I think it's pretty hard to log into a system and type in accidentally week after week after week after you have a job. And I understand, you know, that there's a lot of people being frauded right now. I'm not sure if the board that we voted on earlier that went on will, if they oversee Representative Hsu, I could ask you that. What does that board, does that help alleviate, go through these people that might fall into the fraud category? Is that what they do?
I would defer to the Department of Labor. I wouldn't feel comfortable for sure making a statement on that.
Okay. So with what's going on right now, with the amount of fraud that's going on right now, it's hard for me to agree to allow somebody that does it on purpose to be able to come back every year and continue to do it. Is there a limit on how many times we can catch them, or is it just they get suspended for a year each time? Do you know, Representative Miller?
I wouldn't say I knew. I would take an educated guess that they could.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion.
I think a way to approach that might be a 3 strikes and you're out sort of approach. That you do it once, it's 1 penalty. You repeat it, it might be lifetime at that point.
Okay. Well, if your amendment doesn't pass, then you bring it on the floor. Maybe that'll help carry it on the floor. That changed.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Well, we'll see how it goes today. You can close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the input from the committee. It helps me chart a plan ahead. I will also, and I did not want to belabor the discussion today because it's a long bill and we need to get it over with, but I'd be happy to give some illustrations of the harshness for people who quote unquote knowingly do something. Not everyone operates at the same skill level as some of the people we know. Not everyone is familiar with appeals. Not everyone can get an attorney to successfully launch that appeal. And so there are people who might have submitted a claim that was a few cents off and be deemed to be fraudulent, and they haven't gone through, nor would they even win an appeal because technically they would have knowingly done it. But there are some harsh realities out there, and I think 5 years for some people is too harsh. But I do appreciate the input. I do expect to be successful on this powerful closing. I move my amendment.
My apologies. I'm being told that Representative Burrows might have had a question or a statement on the amendment. Representative Burrows.
I appreciate it. There's been a motion to close. I'll wait to discuss it on the floor.
I would just say Representative Burrows is my office mate, and we've discussed this very subject, and I was expecting his hand to be up much louder than it was, but thank you.
Okay, committee, you've heard the motion seconded by Representative Clayton. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All against the motion, say no. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Representative, you made some good points in your closing, and I think if nothing else, we do need to take a hard look at how some of these people get sucked into this program and can't get out of it, because that is not right.
Could we confirm with research that they understood the request?
Eddie, could you restate the request from Representative Miller?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Representative, my understanding is that you want information concerning what other states, ideally all 50, but as many as possible, do regarding the disqualification period for fraudulent statements made. Is that correct?
I think that's close enough.
I think that is, and maybe if there are states that have certain statutes as far as repeat offenders, as much research as we could get on something like that, and maybe appeals processes and who pays for it, and I guess a good way to help people that accidentally create this issue rather than those that purposely create it. Okay, committee, we're over time here. Just kind of what my plan is. It would be nice to finish this bill tomorrow. I think we have a few extra amendments on that I'm aware of, and I'm not sure how many you guys still have. I don't know. Okay, well, so we will reopen this hearing tomorrow and hopefully get through it. That would be the intent. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. See you tomorrow.